The one, the only, Bencio Land. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Ideally speaking, again, we're learning this book, The 10 Really Dumb Mistakes That Very Smart Couples Make. We're in the middle of chapter 1, the second part of chapter 1. The second half of chapter 1 is continuation. We left off talking about infatuation. The beginning, when a boy and a girl meet, they're infatuated with each other, if they like each other, and if they're not shidduched, as I mentioned last time. So they're infatuated with each other for a while. They don't see each other's flaws, and then they get married because they're infatuated with each other. And then one day, as he says, many couples experience a moment of revelation. It might be 2 weeks after the wedding or 2 months later, but one morning, either he or she, or sometimes both, wakes up and says to themselves, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I married the wrong person." It's true, the author says, that they made a mistake, but not the mistake they think. Their mistake wasn't marrying the wrong person. They made a far more fundamental mistake, mistaking infatuation for love. And he goes on to talk about this. This is actually the first of the really dumb mistakes that smart couples make, is that they mistake infatuation for love. As he says, infatuation blinds, love binds. After the infatuation wears off, after a couple months of marriage, a year of marriage, or maybe while they're still engaged, infatuation doesn't last too long. Maybe the night after they get married, the day after they get married. So now they have to live with each other. So he says, now is the time to work on love. Love is something which is not automatic. You don't love somebody, you're infatuated with them. Love is working on your relationship. You see the negativity in other people, and you adjust to that. Either you ignore it, or you talk about a way to deal with it. It's important in marriage to communicate. Communication is a very important thing. I don't know what he's going to talk about at communication, but communication is very important because a lot of people are taught in seminaries and yeshivas that one of the biggest qualities of a successful marriage is the ability to be a vatron, someone who, has problems with the other person. They're annoying them. They're doing things that actually hurt them sometimes, and you overlook it. I heard from someone, my wife's family, that a person in marriage has to learn how to be deaf, dumb, and blind. That makes for a successful marriage. You don't hear the insults that they say to you. You pretend you don't understand when they're making fun of you. And you don't see all the mistakes that they make, whether it's financially or domestically. They make mistakes. You overlook them. You're a mavatron. That's the greatest. Both spouses are vatronim. Now, usually the way it works is one spouse is the vatron, the other one is imposing their will and stepping on the other person, quite literally. This happens almost every marriage. It's usually the husband stepping on the wife or the wife stepping on the husband. It's usually not 50-50. That's just the way marriages are. Vatronas could be a good thing for certain things that are stupid, silly things. Like my wife, pours herself a drink and leaves the cup on, the desk in the bedroom. We have a fridge in our bedroom. She leaves the cups there. It's annoying. I told her a couple times I'd like her to throw out the cup. She doesn't throw it out. It's okay. I don't care. I throw it out for her. It's not a big deal. I'm not gonna. It's not something people can't control these stupid little things, So who cares? So I throw out the cups for her. It's not a big deal. I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. But there are certain things that are very important in a marriage, and that's where communication comes in. If you don't know how to communicate well, as I mentioned many times, if you're awkward in the bedroom, even a little bit, you're not going to communicate well. First of all, inside the bedroom, and certainly outside the bedroom, you're not going to communicate well. And when you don't communicate, that diminishes the ability to reach a peace treaty because you have to make compromises in marriage. The way to deal with problems in marriage that are real problems, when a spouse is abusing the other spouse, because it happens a lot. There's a lot of domestic abuse, not physical abuse, but either verbal abuse or people just, you know, do what they want and, you know, walk over their spouse, literally and figuratively. Um, they make their spouse do all the chores. They do nothing, you know. And then when the spouse opens their mouth, they tell them they're rude, they're obnoxious, they're not from enough. So it's very important to not be a vatran. The Gemara says, "Kol Omer Kadosh Baruch Hu vatran, yivatru ma'oh." Kadosh Baruch Hu is not a vatran. He's not a vatran. It's not a good midah to be a vatran. It's not a good midah. I don't know where this concept came from. You know, it came from basically the idea in the Sefer Nefesh Chaim. He says in the introduction that Chaim Volozhin told him, said his father, Yitzchak Volozhin, told him that the whole point of this world is to do for the other person. Not care about yourself at all and do for the other person. Makes perfect sense. Be a vatran. Okay, it bothers me. It hurts me. He's insulting me. He's stepping on me. He's making me do all the chores in the house, or vice versa. Right? Nonetheless, be a vatran. Care about him, not me. People are taught that. Well, when I got married, I also felt like that. I got to just do for my wife. You know, I was schooled in the yeshivish Haredi world. You know, what can I do to make my wife happy? Happy wife makes a happy life. Right? That's what you say the first beginning of marriage. I want to go out happy as much as possible. I didn't focus on, you know, whether it was a fair deal or not. Whether I was getting what I want or not. It wasn't until a couple years later when I stuck up for myself. I said, there's certain things I want also. I need certain things, you know. So it has to be a fair marriage. And vatronas is a terrible thing. It's a really bad midah. No one should have vatronas. But it doesn't mean you should just not be a vatran and get angry at the other person. You have to learn how to speak and compromise and have dialogue and open communication. And that's really the most important thing in a marriage. Now he's talking about love. You have problems in a marriage. The husband is spending too much money. The woman's spending too much money. Usually the woman's spending too much money. With me, it's the opposite. The woman's spending too much money. The husband gets angry too often. The wife is impatient. She wants his time. The man wants his space. You know, everyone has their situation. These are tendencies that men and women generally have. The way to deal with this is to talk about it, to compromise. Does this, what he says, working on your marriage builds love? I don't think this builds love, you know. He talks about that's the point of marriage, you know, you work on it. As he says at the end of the chapter, it's really the way the Reishis Chachma says is that it's not that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes zivugim, right, he goes through all the neshamos and he says this one is for this one. No. You were created in Shemayim as one person. Hashem split you into two, a male and female part. He put the male in one person, female in the other person. You eventually meet later on in life. So you're part, and that's part of marriage, which is the previous book I did, A Living Marriage. He said that's the whole point of the bedroom, is to unify the male and the female characteristic together, and you're shalom, and then you bring the Shekhinah. So I didn't agree with him in that book. I don't agree with him in this book either. I don't know exactly what the Reish Chacham calling is Zohar. Don't take Zohars literally. It's not a good idea. Even the Zohar himself would say, don't take me literally. And yet people continue to this day to be mocked on things in the Zohar in a literal fashion. It's astounding. The Gemara is not even supposed to be taken literally. Certainly the Zohar. So the way he views marriage is that you're reuniting with your lost self and you're finding your other half and you work on your problems and you love each other. That's assuming, right, which he says also in this chapter, that part of marriage is bitachon, to trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? You start dating at the age of 20, 21, 22. You're making the biggest decision in your life. How can you make a decision like that? You have to know that Hashem knows best, and Hashem will set us up with the right person. We have to trust. That's what he says at the end of the chapter about bitachon, because he says the second really dumb mistake is also included in this first chapter, is that people say, I could have done better. And they might be right, he says. They might have been able to snag a person who has more of a specific positive quality or doesn't have the shortcomings that their spouse has. And they would think, if only I had married him, life would be so easy. I would be so happy. What they forget is that this other person has his own constellation of issues, shortcomings, flaws, and idiosyncrasies that make him difficult to live with. Just ask his wife. It boils down to a question of bitachon. Do I trust Hashem? Do I trust that Hashem has chosen an ideal life partner? He says when you get married, you fully intend that it will be for life, but you are woefully ill-equipped to make that choice. You don't know the future. You don't know who you'll be then. Right? People change after they get married. It makes sense that you change because it's a new aspect of life. You're not living by yourself, you're living with someone else, and then ultimately with children. And you certainly don't know who the person you're marrying will be. You are both works in progress, changing, growing, and charting unknown waters. Decision of whom to marry is something that any thinking person will quickly realize is above our capacity. You just don't have the ability to make such a choice. The only sane way to make that choice is by trusting Hashem. Trusting Hashem means trusting that Hashem knows exactly what you need now and for the future, and that Hashem chose the ideal partner for you. So that's an essential part of getting married and ultimately staying married. As he says at the end of the chapter, he brings over here, there's the 3 pillars of marriage over here. The first is commitment, love, and learning to live together. Here he's dealing with commitment, even though he's saying he's talking about actual love over here. But in order to build commitment, you have to be committed to each other, to love each other. Then practically he'll talk about in coming chapters how to love each other. But Hashem gave you your basher, according to him. I said I don't believe you're married to your basher last week, so obviously I argue what he's saying over here. But Hashem gave you this person. Trust in Hashem, and it's the best person for you. You just got to work out your problems, and then you'll have love. Be committed to it because Hashem. Trust in Hashem, and then you'll have love. I do believe in the concept of love between man and woman. I think it's a great thing. I don't know if it's possible to love somebody who's not your zivug. And according to me, you're not married to your zivug. So I don't know if it's possible to love the person who's not suited for you. And I will say one more thing over here. He says, bitachon is something we often talk about but seldom understand. The Chovos HaLevavos, Chapter 4, Part 3, explains that in order to have bitachon, there are 2 concepts a person must fully embrace. The first is simple, that Hashem loves me more than I love me. As much as I want what's best for me, Hashem wants it even more. As much as I want everything to turn out well, Hashem wants it even more. As much as I want my success, Hashem wants it even more. As much as I love myself, Hashem loves me even more. Somehow, this has become, a fact in Hashkafa of Haredi Judaism. There's even children's books about this. There's a book, Who Loves Me the Most? I saw a children's book. Is it my mommy? Is it my tati? Is it grandma? Is it my brother? Is it my sister? No. Who loves you the most? Hashem loves you the most. This is a children's book. They put this out. It's propaganda over here. Who says Hashem loves you? Where in the Torah does Hashem say that he loves you more than yourself? The only person that loves himself more than, the only person that loves you is yourself, should be yourself, right? Most people, they might like you. Your parents might love you, but, there's certain things about you that bother them, but you should love yourself. You are the one. Usually it's the opposite. People hate themselves. If the reality and they go deep down into themselves, right? This is an episode from Seinfeld, He goes out with a lot of girls all the time. It never works out. Finally meets a girl perfect for him. Everything's perfect. She's exactly like him. Exactly like him in everything. The Zivug Mamish, they're exactly the same. Not like the way the author said that the point of a Zivug is where one person is good, the other person is bad, to balance each other out. No. They're, like I said, a Zivug should be someone who share the same interests and share the same strengths, and you can have a good time together. That makes sense to me. He met the person, but then he couldn't marry her because he said he hates himself. If he hates himself, he can't like someone who's like you. Most people hate themselves. That's the truth. The truth of the matter is the goal of life is to love yourself. It's hard to love yourself. It's much easier to think you love other people. People care about themselves more than anyone else. Do they love themselves? Hard. You have to really work on yourself and be a complete person before you can love yourself. But who says Hashem loves you, right? In fact, there's a discussion on whether, if everyone's heard of Murphy's Law. Do you believe in Murphy's Law or not believe in Murphy's Law? I think when someone asked my Rosh Hashiva, Yaakov Friedman, does Judaism believe in the concept of Murphy's Law? Absolutely not. Everything that Hashem does, called Avid Rahman al-Tava. Okay, the Gemara says that. Hashem does everything for the best. Everything's going to work out for you in the best way. Murphy's Law says everything will go the worst it could possibly go. And if you think about life, honestly, people who are older and have gone through life experiences, whether it's shidduchim, finances, you know, health problems. Usually, the way it is that it gets as bad as it possibly can, and then there's a salvation to keep you alive, to keep you going, and then it gets as bad and bad as it possibly can, and then there's a salvation, right? It's very rare for people to just go through life and everything works out for them, because really that would be the best. Hashem loves them the most. I want to do everything the best for them, right? Everything goes smoothly. There, But we say no. Hashem really wants the best for us, but He wants us to earn Olam Haba. So we dress it up and we say, no, Hashem's really doing it. Just He loves us. He wants us to earn Olam Haba, like the Derech Hashem says. But the truth of the matter is, these are all dressing up, nice ways of saying the cold hard facts. Is that Murphy's Law is true. That the way the world is, you go in a downward spiral. Once you get married and you have kids, life is downhill from there. It gets harder and harder and harder until you die. You might get, maybe when you get you're 65 and you have your grandkids and you get your Social Security, maybe it feels okay. You got your nest egg, and you go to Boca Raton to die. But the truth of the matter is that it gets harder and harder in life. So this conception that in the Jewish world, especially in the Frum Jewish world, believes that the best, Hashem always doing the best for me, right? It's not true, right? And he talks about it over here. He says, that concept isn't that difficult to accept. It is a second concept, he says, that gives us the most trouble in life. That is accepting that Hashem knows better than me what is for my best, right? So the first idea, propaganda, is believe that Hashem loves you more than yourself. And what follows from that is that Hashem knows me better. And therefore, even though I want a shidduch, like he says, I need a shidduch. If you give me a shidduch, or you give me a parnasa, or you give me health, I'll learn daf yomi, give tzedakah, work on not speaking lashon hara. But Hashem still doesn't listen. You feel frustrated. I don't get it. I need it. It's good for me. It's so important. Hashem, why aren't you giving me this? Are you angry with me? Do you have complaints about the way I'm acting? Hashem, why? The thought that maybe, just maybe, this is what's best for you never crosses your mind. So that's what the author says. Everything's the best for you, right? Hashem didn't want to give it to you. Maybe you actually do know what's the best for you, right? It's not so hard to figure it out. It is in the beginning, but eventually, if you sift through all the different possibilities of what could happen to you, you've got a pretty good imagination. Have unlimited money, marry a beautiful woman, be an alpha male. There's a lot of things that could be really good. We know what the good things are in life, the good personality traits, be extroverted. We know about, there's a lot of things we know about the good things in life. Most people are fairly certain it's better to be rich than poor. It's better to be good looking than ugly. It's better to be having a good time than depressed. These are things we know. But Hashem knows better. Hashem made me depressed. Hashem made me poor. Hashem made me married to an ugly woman. Hashem made a million things for me. But this is the best. This is what I need. And this is the best. Hashem wants the best. He loves you more than he wants the best. No. Murphy's Law is true. It's true. It's true. Life is a downward spiral. And the only way we can save ourselves, we have one way. The only thing we're given is free will, is consciousness. And even that the author got wrong, because the author says, the second really dumb mistake the very smart couples made, they look around and say, I could have done even better. And they might be right. They might have been able to snag a person who has more of a specific positive quality or doesn't have the shortcomings that their spouse has. Right? They might be able to do it. According to him, you have free will. Right? You have free will. Free will, you can affect the actions. No, the point is, he's wrong about that, is that you can't affect, because if it was true that really you could affect who you marry, right? I got married to a person. If I wanted to, I could have married somebody else that I was possibly interested in. If that were possible, that means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not governing this world, because Hashem had one plan. I could just alter the plan. I could just, right? Obviously, the concept of free will, Hashem, everything was scripted throughout from the beginning of time to the end of time. But we're given the decision making, the free will to make choices. Doesn't mean that our choice, even if we choose to something, it will be carried out. Maybe Hashem will put a different thought in our mind. Maybe something will happen that won't let me do what I wanted to do. You can't marry a person that you're not supposed to marry. It's not going to happen. And that's ultimately, all we're given is the ability to make decisions. If you make decisions, good decisions for a long enough time, then you'll free yourself. Like they say in Auschwitz, Arben machen free. It's not talking about the work they did in Auschwitz. It's talking about the only work that human beings are encumbered with is making decisions and free will. So if you're good at decisions, making decisions, and you exercise your free will to the maximum of your ability, and you don't not make decisions. Not making a decision is the worst thing to do, because if you make a wrong decision, at least you can do tshuva and feel bad about it and move on. But if you don't make a decision, you stop making decisions, then it's remote control. Hashem's running your life for you, and you're going in a downward spiral, and that's it. And we don't want to know what happens to you after you die. So this is the truth of the matter. This is, it's really not so much about marriage over here. It's more a discussion on hashkafa over here. But the reason I'm discussing this is because this is the whole thesis is predicated on this, is that infatuation runs out. And then you have to build your marriage through love. And love is by working out your problems or overlooking the problems, or maybe he hasn't talked about it, communicating it, fixing the problems that you have, that one spouse has, or not fixing it, or negotiating, which are valid means of living together. But it's not going to bring love. Love is only created when you share the same interests. Think about a best friend. If you can think about a man, it's hard to think about a woman, because you get confused. Man and woman, they love each other, attracted to each other. Like what kind of relationship is it? You can think more if you have a best friend as a man. What kind of friends do you have as a man? I'm not big into friends. I think it's a stupid concept, friends, but everyone has friends, So if you ever had a good friend, what type of people do you gravitate to? People who have the same interests as you, right? You're not going to become friends with somebody who has totally different interests as you, or is not good at the things you're good at. So if you think carried over, it makes sense also, male-female relationship. If you want to have love, you have to have shared interests, shared skill sets, shared everything. You should share everything, but you should be as similar to each other as possible. And if you love yourself, like Jerry Seinfeld said, if you love yourself, then you'll love the female version of yourself, and it'll be a nice compliment, because females obviously tend to be more emotional than men, or more intellectual. So it's a fun to go out and have dinner together with someone who's the same as you. Trust me, all these people that he's going to tell you go out for dinner once a week, that'll solve all your problems. Most people, when they go out to dinner with their wife, they just sit there, either talk about the food or the kids, or stare at other people and notice what other people are doing, because they're exactly the opposite of each other. Instead of being the same with each other, which brings love, they're the opposite of each other. So that's why they're distracted and they have nothing to talk about, because you're the opposite person. You have nothing to talk about. You don't share interests. You don't share tendencies. You don't share strengths. You don't share, personalities. So you're going to be very different than the other person. You have to, theoretically, love would be if you get married to someone who's the female version of yourself. It's just not going to happen. That's just reality over here. So I'm sorry to dampen everyone's mood, but that's true love. True love is not negotiate. People that are woman who's the opposite of you and does everything against you, and you negotiate. If you're successful in marriage, you negotiate and try to work out things that are fair to both of you. It doesn't bring love. It brings being able to live together. Let's conclude with the end. He says at the end, he says a story about his Rebbe, his Rosh Hashiva of Hanach Leibowitz, who was the Rosh Hashiva of Chafetz Chaim, Kew Gardens. He passed away. He says the Rosh Hashiva was 7 years older than the Rebbetzin, and for much of his life wasn't well. It was unspoken, but expected the Rosh Hashiva would pass on before his wife. That's not what happened. The Rebbetzin took ill and passed away a short time later. At the funeral, the Rosh Hashiva got up to speak. He began by saying, everything, he was talking about his wife, everything we did together. We built the yeshiva together. We worried about Talmidim together. Everything we did together. We went to Eretz Yisrael together. When I was sick, she worried about my health more than I did. I didn't have to worry about my diet or my medicine. She did everything for me. Everything we did together now. His wife did everything for him. Did he do everything for his wife? She was the Azer. She was the helper. She was the secretary. He got an Azer. He was Zaka. He got credit. You have to pay back that credit. You take out credit from a bank, a credit card, you have to pay back your debt. He must have repeated that expression more than a dozen times. Then Rosh Hashiva was silent. After a long time he said, I said a hesped for my father, I said a hesped for my mother. but I can't say a hesped for my wife. I say a hesped for my wife. It is as if I were saying a hesped about myself. I can't do it. I can't say hesped about himself. He didn't die yet, so we can't talk about his wife because they were a unit. They were everything together. So this is his Rebbe, where he got a lot of his hashkafa, his ideology about marriage. His Rebbe Rosh Hashiva. I don't know if you realize, but he had a type of marriage where basically his wife was doing everything for him. Right? His wife didn't want a yeshiva. He wanted the yeshiva. She helped him build the yeshiva. She didn't care about the Talmidim. He cared about the Talmidim. Women don't care about getting honor from Talmidim. They don't care about that, right? It's the men. He wanted the yeshiva. He wanted the Talmidim. He was the one that got sick. She took care of his meds. She took care of the yeshiva. She cooked for the yeshiva. She cleaned for the yeshiva. She took care of the finances for the yeshiva. She helped build it. She went there and built the bricks together with him, even though men are supposed to build. So at the end of the day, she did everything for him, and it was a one-sided relationship. But it's a credit. Zacha, Ezer, lo zacha kenegdo. Everyone thinks it's better to have an Ezer, right? You get a helper, a secretary during your lifetime. But at the end of the day, it's like credit. Zacha means a credit, right? Credit cards. You take money on credit, you got to pay it back. You get a credit. It's better lo zacha. You don't take credit. You get someone who's the opposite, who stands in your way. Right, all wives are the opposite of you. They might help you. Some of them might be good at helping you. That's maybe the best theoretically you get. You have to pay back the debt. The best really is to get someone who's completely opposite of you and stands in your way, everything you want to do. That's connected, but you don't have any debt. That's why it's good. Lo zacha. You don't have credit, no debt. So, so that's the end. So really, the truth was, when he didn't want to say a hesped because when his wife died, he had died because his wife was him. His wife took care of him. His wife did everything for him. So essentially what he really was saying is that he died, and you can't say a hesped after you're dead, right? Anyway, we'll conclude over here. We'll start the next chapter. People who listen to this, they might think, man, this guy's got a vendetta against this guy, or Ben Sion Schaefer. Listen, I never met the guy. I don't know who this guy is. But I will say that I'm just a straight shooter, I tell you what I believe. People have their own theories. He's a marriage guru, apparently, someone who obviously knows a lot better about marriage than I do. I've only been married almost 6 years, a little less than 6 years, so he knows a lot more about marriage. He's been married, he was happily married 15 years before he realized that people have problems with their marriage. So he didn't even have problems for 15 years. 15 years, he was happily married. He didn't know there was such a thing as a problem in a marriage. Or someone don't know about. And then people started coming to him telling there's problems with my marriage. Oh, really? But he figured it out, and he wrote a book about it. I have nothing against him. Just when people talk about, they have their opinions. He's strongly opinionated about his knowledge about marriage. I also have my own opinions, and I'll say them straight and blatant, And when people are opinionated, they could expect a rebuttal. That's the way the world works. So, I don't mince my words. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one.